Welcome to phase 2 of our 3-phase Creating Floor Plans for Events training. I am Carl Jimenez. I'd like to welcome you back. So on our phase 1, we went into our space and did a rough sketch on paper of what the space looked like and took our measurements. For today, we're actually going to be putting that on the computer, and the software we're going to be using for that is not some fancy event planning software or architectural software. We're actually going to be using something you probably already have, Microsoft PowerPoint. Now, the some of the buttons and things that you have on your version of PowerPoint may be different because they do change it over time. The one that I'm using is Microsoft Office Professional Plus 2019 on a Windows 10 laptop. So if you're working on a Mac, it'll look a little different. If you're working on a different version of PowerPoint, it'll look a little different. But all the same concepts will apply. It's just a matter of sort of finding the exact tools and buttons to click on your version. So a couple of training tips for you. First of all, this is going to be a pretty fast-paced training, so feel free to pause, feel free to rewind and replay as much of it as you need to sort of get some of the concepts and things that I'm talking about. On the first time you watch this, watch it all the way through with just watching me create the layout myself. Then I would encourage you to go back and watch it a second time, and then you can on that one sort of do it hands-on and actually do the layout that you took measurements for. Okay. Why are scale drawings useful? So we're doing a scale drawing. What this does is that it'll allow us to, when we're planning an event, try different event setups, tables in rows, chairs and theater style seating. Do we want to use rectangular tables or round tables? It'll help us try different setups beforehand, and also help us sort of plan what kind of equipment we need to rent or use at the venue. So you don't want to just say, it looks like 10 tables will probably fit in that space, and then you get there and only 8 fit. So this way you're going to be able to plan it out and know exactly what kind of equipment you'll need. And you'll know like what's possible and what isn't. Sometimes you'll be working with a client and they'll be like, I want to put 20 tables in there. And you need to be able to say, look at the scale drawing. That is not possible. So that's one of the great things that you can do with this. So again, so phase 1 of this training was captured space. This is phase 2, building. And then phase 3 will be where we fill the space, putting in the tables and decorations and things like that. In phase 1, we did a sketch, and this is the sketch that we did of the room where we measured the space itself and some of the things like the doors and the windows, and measured like how far they were from different walls and that sort of thing. Okay, so 3 things we're going to try and achieve by the end of this 15-minute training is we want to translate the paper notes from paper onto the computer. And in doing that, we'll sort of learn what kind of notes are most useful. What you'll be like, oh, I wish I had measured, how far that window was from the door or something. By doing this, you're going to start to get a better sense of what you really need to do when you're just taking those initial measurements. By the time we're done, we'll have a template that you can use for phase 3 when we start putting tables and things like that into the space. Right. We're going to talk about 3 main concepts in this training. One is understanding scale. One is building the box, building the main shape of the room, and then adding in the architectural elements. There's 3 main scales that I use when doing these layouts, floor plans in PowerPoint. The simplest is a small scale. That's what we're going to be using for the demo here, where 1 inch equals 1 foot. So if you want a 5-foot round table in the room, you're going to draw a 5-inch round circle on the PowerPoint page. Medium scale, sometimes I'll do things where 1 inch is equal to 2 feet. That's for sort of like larger spaces, like a conference room, or like maybe a basketball court size space. And if you're doing a really large space, like a parking lot or like something on a football field, you'd use a larger scale of 1 to 10. 1 to 2 is a little more complicated than 1 to 1, but it's sufficient for the right size space. 1 to 10 is not too difficult because you just move the decimal point. You'll sort of see what I mean if you ever get into doing that. But again, it's not as difficult, but it really is only good for large spaces. So step 1 is building the box. We're going to draw the outermost measurements of the drawing that we did. And then we're going to add space eater elements. In our case, there's a bookshelf that's sort of in there and it kind of eats up part of the inside space of the room. And we're going to add any other features that are part of the space. Our room had a couple of poles in it. It had a window, it had a built-in TV screen and a door. So we're going to add all of those types of things. Okay. So here's a demonstration of building the box. So in a PowerPoint, what I did is I just, when you first launch PowerPoint, it's going to sort of set up a default size of like a widescreen or a traditional slide format. What you want to do though is you want to create sort of a canvas. And the way I do that is you go to the Design tab and look for some, and again, it may be different in your software, but you're going to go where you can adjust the slide size. And the and set the custom size. The biggest size that PowerPoint will generally let you do is 50 inches wide by about 40 inches tall. So that's kind of my default canvas size that I create. Okay, so again, in a 1 inch to 1 foot scale, that's going to allow me to draw something that's as wide as 50 feet and as tall as 40 feet, okay, which should suit our drawing really well because our space is 45 feet wide, as you can see here, 30 feet tall. So that will fit within our 40-foot by 50-foot scale. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, let's see, we're going to draw the outermost sort of measurements of the space. So I'm going to start with a square rectangle here and kind of draw a rough space that's kind of ballpark what I want it to be. But I want these the right sizes. So I'm going to go into format shape. Usually you'll like right click and have a thing that says format shape. That'll bring up some settings that you can use in PowerPoint. One of those settings is for the size of objects. So this object is selected. It's 24 inches tall, 42 inches wide. But our room is actually 30 feet tall by 45 inches wide, 45 feet wide. So I'm going to change this height to 30 inches for 30 feet, change the width to 45 inches for 45 feet. So that's the right proportions of my room. Put that in the middle of the page. I'm going to go to my fill and change that so that it's just sort of a white space. And that's sort of the starting point of our room there. Okay. Now adding space eater elements. We've got this built-in shelving here that's 20 feet wide by 3 feet tall. So in that corner, I'm going to draw another box and I'm going to make it kind of ballpark it there, eyeball it. But I want to go to the measurements and make that 3 feet tall by 20 feet wide. And I'm going to change that color to sort of gray. So we kind of know it's just sort of dead space. Again, that's just sort of snapped right into that corner there. So again, that is this built-in shelving here. Now I want to add the windows and the doors. So the window on this right wall is 20-foot wide window bay. And it's 5 feet away from the top wall and 5 feet away from the bottom wall. So to do doors and windows, I usually just make just kind of like a skinny little box. We just want to have something on the page that kind of will tell us that, yeah, there's a window here. So the measurements that I usually use are to make it about like a 1/2 inch wide. So it's about 6 inches wide, but that doesn't really matter. And the height, again, it's a 20-foot window. So I'm going to do it 20 inches. Now I want to put it 5 feet from that wall and 5 feet from this wall. So to do that, I'm going to just draw another box, hold on my shift and make it a nice square. And I want to make that box 5 inches by 5 inches. So it's basically a 5 foot by 5 foot space in the room. Line that up there, scooch that window up there, and you can see that it's 5 feet from the wall and 5 feet from the other wall. Perfect, right? I'm going to set this aside because I'm going to use that again in just a moment. Okay, so that shows you where the window is. Now for the door, I'm going to copy and paste that or duplicate that window, and I'm going to turn it sideways. And again, it's not 20 feet wide. The door is only 3 feet wide. So I'm going to change that 20 to a 3. And I'm going to put that kind of roughly where I remember it being. Now, if I look at my drawing, I can see that that door is actually 20 feet from this wall. So I'm going to take this box here, and I want to make this 20 feet wide. Just know that it's going to got to be that far from that wall. And it's pretty close when I ballparked it, but put it there, and that's, you know, that's a good, just about a perfect 20 feet from that wall. Okay. Again, I'm just going to set this out of the way. Finally, on the left-hand side, we had a video monitor that's 10 feet wide, video screen, and it was 9 feet from this bottom wall. So I'm going to duplicate this window. Instead of 10 feet or 20 feet tall, I'm going to make it only 10 feet because that's the size of that projection screen. Put that over there. And again, that was 9 feet from that wall. So I'm going to make this box, instead of 5 inches, I'll make it 9 because it'll be 9 feet from that wall. So if I line that up on the room there, you know that that video screen will be right about there. And I'm going to put that because it sticks out from the wall just a little bit in the real room. So again, now we have a scale room. We have our built-in bookshelf. We have our window, our video screen, and our door. The only other architectural element in there were these poles. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to first make a circle and make a little pole right there. And there was another one. I'm going to duplicate that, and it's right about here-ish. But we want it to be accurate, so we want that to be, according to our drawing, 6 feet from the top wall, 14 feet from the right wall, 6 feet and 14 feet. So I'm going to take this box. I'm going to make that, let's see, 6 feet tall and 14 feet wide. And that will show me where that pole needs to be. I'm going to put that in the corner there. And I'll know that pole will want to be right about there, 6 feet by 14 feet. The other one from the other side is also 6 feet from that wall, 14 feet from that wall. So now I'm just going to move this box down here. And I'm going to move this pole right there. And that is our room. So we've got all the elements. We've got the window, the door, the video screen, the shelving. We've got the poles in the right place. And that's all that we're going to need when we switch over to phase 3, where we actually put the tables and things in place. So let me go back to my slides here and tell you a little bit more. So when we added the architectural elements like that, one of the things that you'll want to do is you can color things. Remember, I made that shelving just gray, so you know it's kind of dead space. And I made those other architectural elements blue. Maybe you want your window to be green because there's trees outside, and that'll kind of help you know that that's what you're looking at, that that's a window looking outside. One of the other things, though, that's important to do is grouping things. And you can kind of create group handles. And then I'll tell you a little bit about duplication. So real quick, let me switch back to that. I'm going to show you about grouping, because when we come in on phase 3, we're going to be putting things in tables and moving things around. I don't want to accidentally misposition any of this stuff. First of all, I'm going to delete that little measuring box I had. I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to right click on it and group that. So now it's all one piece, so that when I start adding in tables and things, none of that's going to sort of be there. There's one thing you can do. I call it group handles to create layers. So what you can do is you can make like a little box and say, I want this to be, let's see, I'm going to ungroup this. Say I want to be able to hide and show this bookcase. What I could do is I could group those two together. Okay. And then if I wanted to sort of hide that, I would just grab this, click on that, and I would go to my, here it is, arrange at the top here, and send that to the back. And so now that what that does is that just sort of hiding behind this floor shape. But if I want to bring it back, you know, I can't click on it here because it's hidden. But because we grouped it with this piece, I can go there, go to arrange, and bring that to the front, and it sort of puts it back. So you can create these little handles if there's things in the room that you want to hide or show. That'll come in handy in phase 3 when you're starting to add in some of your other elements there. One other thing too that you're going to want to do is once you start, and we'll cover more of this in phase 3, but once you have your sort of main layout, one of the first things I like to do is to duplicate that slide and then start working with this. Always leave my sort of, you know, plain, perfect layout in an untouched slide, you know, and I may make like a few different versions of this so that I can start adding in, you know, like my tables, my rounds, you know, stuff like that. And then I can always go back to this and sort of do a different type of layout. So duplicating is going to come in real handy for you here when you are doing your actual layout. In closing, there's a couple things I want you to do. First of all, I'd love for you to take a quiz, and this will just kind of help you sort of test your own knowledge, make sure you caught everything that we were talking about. Then if you miss something, you'll be able to go back and sort of like watch for it when you replay the video. So to take that quiz, you're going to go to links.asu.edu/floor plan quiz. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is to evaluate this training session so that I know what I did well and what maybe I need to work on improving for next time we do this training. And to give me that feedback, you're going to go to links.asu.edu/floor plan feedback, and we'll be able to use that to improve the process for future sessions. Thank you so much for taking part, and we'll see you for phase 3. Bye-bye.